What is up, listeners of the Didn't Ask podcast? Welcome to episode 37. I say from the top of my head. I hope you had a good week. Welcome back if you are listening to the podcast. Welcome if this is your first time ever. Welcome to the family. I guess I can say now. There is a lot of shit happening in the background right now. I do sincerely apologize for that. There's cleaning going on in my street, and they've been going back and forth constantly for the past hour and a half or something like that. It's been absolutely fucking outrageous. But we're not going to talk about that because hopefully they will be gone very quickly. So we're just going to talk about the week. How's everybody's week been? I hope you had a good week. I personally did. We had a fun UFC event. Misha Tate fighting again. It was a fun fight. The whole card was pretty nice. Was a fun fight week. And we of course had F1 this weekend again. Nothing major happening of consequence. We of course had Hamilton winning the race. He was very fast, going straight forward. Like there was nothing to do about that. There was some little controversy with Max Verstappen with his time and yellow flags and whatever the fuck, and then having to be put back places. It was a whole mess. But then during the race, we had multiple tires being punctured, which that always adds a little bit of, tension to the race. And it was, of course, Valtteri Bottas who destroyed his tires, and then that resulting in a broken car, which meant that he had to retire the car, which that in some form is really good for Red Bull Racing, because that means that Mercedes now has less scores on the constructor standings, which means that if Red Bull continues to do well, they might win the constructor standings, which really cool. Very cool if they do that. Of course, constructor standings doesn't really mean much to the normal F1 fan, but for the constructors themselves, it does mean a lot, because if you win the constructor standings, you win a whole bunch of money. And of course, who doesn't like money? And especially, it would be good for Red Bull to win, because as you know, Red Bull Racing is gonna be building their own engines from next season on, because Honda is stepping away from the racing scene for at least the F1 racing scene. So that means that Red Bull technically is without an engine, but they're gonna use their own engine next season with a little help of Honda, I believe. But that extra money would be really nice to put into the powertrain company. But anyways, I love talking about F1, but this is not a Formula One podcast. This is a Reddit podcast where I dive into the world of Reddit to see what the people asked Reddit and didn't ask me. So let's jump into the first question coming from the Ask Reddit subreddit for today. Asked by user SimCJin, and they ask, what is something you call by a company name instead of the actual thing it is? Most famously, of course, Google. Everything is Google. You Google this, you Google that, even though you might use DuckDuckGo or Bing or Ecosia for all I care. Everybody Googles shit. But Google has become more like a verb and is not a proper noun. So if we're talking about things that are like proper nouns, then I would say Vaseline. Because of course Vaseline is a brand of petroleum jelly, among others. They also sell like body lotion and stuff like that. But yeah, if you think about petroleum jelly, you would say Vaseline. And in a lot of stores over here, you can just go to the store and buy Vaseline that is not made by Vaseline, which I think is super fascinating. Because, of course, again, Vaseline is a brand name, and you can buy Vaseline from Vaseline. But you can also buy Vaseline from said store, which is kind of weird that we use that name. But on one side, of course, it's kind of cool if you're a brand name and your brand name becomes so synonymous with the thing you're selling that other brands don't use the proper name but use your name, which could also lead to some weird legal things. But again, we're not talking about legal stuff. But I would say, yeah, Vaseline and Google are two names that you would use to do things or buy things and then actually not necessarily mean that. I'm really thinking hard right now what other things there are than Vaseline and Google from the top of my head. I would say Legos. Like, also, Legos is not a thing, it's Lego. But Lego is also such an interesting thing because Lego is something you call, like, it is the company name. It's called Lego. But if you think about Lego, you think about the bricks, right? So there are other brands that make building bricks. But if you talk to somebody and you say, "Oh yeah, I would like to buy some cheap Legos," then people know what you're talking about. They know you're meaning like the building bricks, but we call them Legos. So I think that those three are the three brands that I will go with. So it's, for me at least, it's Google, it's Vaseline, and it's Lego. Thank you for your question, Sim C Jin. I'm moving on to the second question for today, coming from user Dr. Doofus Duck. And they ask, what's an extremely useful website most people probably don't know about? I was thinking about this yesterday, actually. I was talking to some friends in a group chat, and they talked, or like we were talking about some stuff, and I got an email from a company that said, hey, you can still sign up for the newsletter, and then you can get a $10 voucher or €10 voucher because we're in the Netherlands, but you get a $10 voucher. So I was like, oh, that's cool, because I wanted to buy some things. So I was just like, oh, that's nice. Let me get that stuff. So I signed up for the newsletter, got the code for the $10 off or €10 off. And then it said below that it only works for purchases of $120 or lower, I think. Euro. Why do I keep saying dollars? I think that dollars is just what I say when I speak in English or something like that. I don't know. But it said 120 euros or more. So I was like, fuck, this is bullshit. So I said that to my friends in the group chat. And then I was like, I think they changed this system because at first it was €5 off of a purchase of like €30 or €25 or something like that. So I said, people probably abused it like I did. And then we started talking further about how I abused the system with creating new email accounts and stuff like that, and then signing up to newsletters to get like the welcome rebate. And then I talked about Email on Deck. And Email on Deck is such a nice website that I use constantly now. And Email on Deck is it's a throwaway email service provider, but it actually is throwaway. So you can only use an email address once, and then after that it will just get deleted, and it's just random names and numbers combined to make an email address. But what makes Email on Deck so nice is that Email on Deck is basically recognized, or at least the email addresses are being recognized by other websites. So it doesn't give you an error, because there are some websites where you fill in like a weird throwaway, temporary email, and then it says like, oh, we don't recognize this email, use a real email address. And I have had this with my own email address of my own websites. Funnily enough, it was one to use for this podcast to sign up for a website to broadcast the podcast, and then it wouldn't let me, and I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Because it is a real email address, it's just not from like an existing provider. So Email on Deck saved my ass, because now every time it I see a website that is like, oh, sign up for the newsletter and get $5 off. I use email on deck to get like a temporary email and then get the $5 discount code and then just throw away the email address. It's really nice. So yeah, that would be my answer to your question, Dr. Doofus Duck. What's an extremely useful website most people probably don't know about? And I would say Email on Deck. It's such a nice email provider that gives you a temporary email, so you can use it to sign up for newsletters and get like the discount codes. Or sometimes you have those websites where it's like, oh, sign up now and get access to this download, and then you can just use that, and it works very nicely. So yeah, that would be my answer to your question. Thank you for your question, Dr. Doofus Duck. Moving on to the third question of today. This one coming from user IceRope1199, and they ask, what video game level can go fuck itself? I saw this question and I immediately thought about one game and one level in particular, and technically they're kind of two levels, but in the latest Super Mario Odyssey that came out on Nintendo Switch, I think now it's actually kind of a while ago. I think it's now 4 years ago or something like that. If you basically complete the game, you unlock a different level called the Dark Side of the Moon. And the Dark Side of the Moon is basically like a try-hard Mario level that basically throws everything at you and makes you survive till the end of the level. But once you do, you then unlock the darker side of the moon, which is even harder than the dark side of the moon. So both of these levels can go fuck themselves because they're super hard and you're constantly dying, and then fucking Mario catches fire and he goes, ah, wah, 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 and then he dies and shit like that. It's absolutely horrible. Luckily, I bought some NFC cards which let me load up some amiibos. So I made myself some amiibo cards, and then I put a Mario amiibo on there. And if you use a Mario amiibo in Mario Odyssey, it gives you the star power up. So you hear the music, and then Mario is basically invincible. So I would keep tapping the amiibo card on my Switch so that it kept loading the star power up, and through that I got through the level eventually, luckily. But still, those levels can go fuck themselves because it took me way too long to get through them. So, user IceRope1199, what video game level can go fuck itself? And I would say certainly the darker side of the moon, but also the dark side of the moon from Mario Odyssey that came out on the Switch. Thank you very much for your question. Moving on to the fourth question of today, coming from user with a fucking shitty ass username, Amotifukufuyut. I don't know what that is. It's fucked up. I'm not even gonna try again. All the countries in the world are at a party. What is your country doing? And of course, if you're a listener of this show, you know that I live in the Netherlands and I've been born here. I grew up here. I love it here. It's a great country to live in. But we are also known as the country for sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So yeah, you could probably see this one coming from miles away, but if all countries had a party, it wouldn't be a party without the Netherlands. Honestly, it would bring some joints so you can smoke yourself to the absolute madness. We would bring hookers because that's what we do. You know what I mean? We got the prostitutes, we got the red light districts down in Amsterdam. It's interesting for sure. It's somewhat fun, I guess. I personally get very uncomfortable when I have to walk through the red light district. This is a fun story. I might have told this on this show before. I probably did. But long story short, there is a comic book store behind the red light district. So if you're in the middle of the city You have to go through the red light district to get to the comic book store that sells like comic books and English books and all anime stuff and Funko Pops and you name it. It's a nerd paradise. It's fantastic. It's really cool down there. But yeah, so there is so much shit to do down there. But again, like I said, you have to go through the red light district. And I personally get very uncomfortable with that. I'm totally fine with the red light district being a thing. I feel like if everybody is safe doing it and there is police around and security around to escort people out the rooms, then everything should be fine. But it's just such a weird thing to just walk over, over or to walk through a street and then see women basically semi nude in micro bikinis and all sorts of stuff. Or I should say, not much stuff. Standing behind glass with red lights behind them. It's very interesting, and again, it makes me a little uncomfortable. But again, I'm all for it. Prostitution should be legal all over the place because I hope that helps people. Because there are certain people that actually get benefits from going to sex workers, people with disabilities and stuff like that. So yeah, they should certainly be legal. But going back to the question asked by user Amoti Fukufuit, all the countries of the world are at a party. What is your country doing? Again, it wouldn't be a party without the Netherlands because we would provide drugs you don't even know what to do with. We would provide hookers and we would provide some nice rock music. So, yeah, thank you for your question. Moving on to the fifth and final question of the Ask Reddit subreddit, coming from Aprilius. And they ask, what is something that you would like to do when no one else is around? Of course, other than the obvious answers, I am a big fan of, first off, doing this podcast. This podcast I always do when there is nobody around. First off, because it's kind of weird to talk to yourself for half an hour, if not more than that, and then have to edit it as well, and then listening to myself talk for half an hour. It's fucking weird. So I always, wait till nobody is there. But my most guilty pleasure of doing is just sing and dance. Like I used to be a dancer for a very long time. I was a dancer for 8 years, dancing professionally all around the Netherlands for sure, and then some places around Europe. It's fun, you know what I mean, being a dancer. So yeah, even though I don't dance anymore as much as I did back then, but I still like to dance around the house from time to time and sing with that. And yeah, singing, I always put my music relatively loud, not that loud because I live in an apartment building, so there are many people around me, so I cannot put it too loud. But yeah, I have a good time singing, putting some Hamilton music on, and not Hamilton the Racer, of course, Hamilton the Lin Manuel Miranda musical. Speaking of that, I watched Tick Tick Boom, and man, that shit is fantastic. I watched it twice actually. I watched it the day before yesterday, and I watched it yesterday again because I had such a good time the first go around. I was like, we're gonna just do it again. And the second time, I kind of think it was even better than the first time, but I have to see the third time to give a definitive answer on that. But yeah, going back to the question asked by user Aprilius, what is something that you'd like to do when no one else is around? And for me, it would be singing and dancing. I love singing with the Hamilton soundtrack. And, some other music. Big Time Rush is a big banger here. I mentioned this maybe last episode or maybe the week before that, but I talked about rapping to YouTube rappers, and I love to do that as well. Love to listen to some KSI, some Randolph, some Toby and Manny, Destined for Greatness and shit like that. Man, love it. Give me some P money as we're while we're at it. You know what I mean? Give me that grime. Give me that drill. It's all fun, and I like to rap with that. So yeah, thank you for your question, Aprilius. And now going to the final question of today. This one coming from the MIDSO subreddit, coming from user a brilliant dash position 19, and they ask, would I be the asshole if I refuse to go to my sister's wedding because I can't bring my girlfriend as my plus one? I'm a lesbian and I've been with my girlfriend for almost 2 years now. My family, including my sister, is all fine with me being gay and supportive of my relationship. However, her fiance comes from a very aggressive and religious family, and while he himself is fine, his extended family is very traditional and anti gay. My sister gave me my invitation in person instead of mailing it and explained that I wasn't getting a plus one because having a gay couple at the wedding would likely end up causing lots of drama with his side of the family. All my other siblings have a plus one and are welcome to bring their hetero partners. I understand where she's coming from, but it feels like such a slap in the face. I'm not going to try and force her to give me a plus one, but I'm seriously considering not going. I love my sister, but I'm not comfortable spending a whole day alone while my other siblings are allowed to bring their partners, just because my sister wants to cater to a bunch of bigots. I haven't said anything to anyone yet, but if I stay home, would I be the asshole? Simple answer to this question, brilliant dash position 19. No, you wouldn't be the asshole. I personally think that your sister is a bit of the asshole in this situation. I understand that she doesn't want to cause drama, but to me, this is like a you know, it's a blood over water type thing where it's just like I understand that you want to be there for your fiance. This speaking of the sister, but brilliant position is family. It's your sister. How the fuck are you gonna be like, yeah, you cannot bring a plus one because you're gay? I personally like at this point, like I understand that the fiance is not his family. I understand that, but at some point you just be like, yo, what the fuck is wrong with you, motherfuckers? My sister is gay. I don't care what the fuck you think about it, but my sister has to be there and she's gonna bring her girlfriend, and that's the end of it. I feel like it would be it makes way more sense for the sister to be at the wedding than some distant family members of the fiance. Like, the sister is, like, I assume that you have like an okay bond between you two. But it seems like, yeah, it seems like a slap in the face that, oh yeah, you can come, but you cannot bring your girlfriend, while everybody else is able to bring their partner and have no issues with that. Like, personally, I feel like your sister has to stand up for you and be like, hey, my sister is coming and she's bringing her girlfriend, and that's the end of it. If your family is not fine with that, then, fuck them, because this is just how society is right now. And again, it doesn't matter if you are like for gay marriage or against it or whatever. Just let people live their fucking lives. This is a fucking wedding. There are two hetero people getting married. They're straight as fuck, marrying each other. What the fuck does it matter if the fucking sister brings a girlfriend? And then with that, it's just like, what does it matter if if the sister brings a girlfriend, as in they are just best friends? What is the difference in that? So, brilliant dash position 19. Would I be the asshole if I refuse to go to my sister's wedding because I can't bring my girlfriend as my plus one? And I would say, no, you're not the asshole. You've been with your girlfriend for 2 years, which is a significant time, especially for me, for somebody that never been in a real serious relationship. So, yeah, it feels like a slap in the face indeed if you get denied for bringing a plus one because the family of the fiance is bigoted. Doesn't feel nice to me. So I hope you figure this out. And I hope you can talk to your sister and be like, hey, I feel very uncomfortable saying this, but I'm not gonna come if I'm not allowed to bring my girlfriend. Because this is who we are and we are a couple. And I don't want to go to that wedding alone because that's just not fun for me. So good luck with that. And hopefully you can fix this mess. And that has been it for the Didn't Ask podcast for this week, episode 37. Again, I'm not fully sure about that, but I believe it is episode 37. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating on Apple Podcast or every other podcast service that allows you to rate me. If you have a question, you can go to anchor.fm/didn't-ask-pod. That link will be in the show description. On that website, you will find a button that says message, and if you press that, you get the ability to record a voice memo with you asking your question to me. I can then slice that voice memo into the podcast so you can hear your voice and question live on air. If you don't want your voice to be heard on the podcast, I can completely understand that, and you want to be more anonymous, that's totally fine by me. Just say it upfront in your message. Then I'll read the question out myself and then answer your question anyways, because that's why I'm here. In the show description, you will also find a link to Tracked.tv. You can go over there to see what I'm watching all this week. I'm watching a lot of shit, so, you better fucking see what I'm watching and watch with me so you can ask me questions about that too. Finally, you can find this podcast on YouTube and any other podcast servers around the globe. So please subscribe to my channel on YouTube and subscribe to the podcast on all your favorite podcast services and click on the auto download button. Because if you do that, that means that is a guaranteed listen for me, which means that are better numbers for me, which means a brighter future for this podcast. Well, that is enough of me talking to myself. I hope to see you back next week. Until then, I hope you have a good week. That's gonna be it for me for now. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.